TRIPS also evolved the concept of geographical indicators as a recognizable IP law principle deserving protection. Common examples are Indian basmati rice grown in Indian subcontinent, Darjeeling tea grown in Darjeeling, India, or champagne grown in the Champagne district of France. TRIPS Article 2 talks of protection of geographical indications. Geographical indications are, for the purposes of this agreement, indications which identify a good as originating in the territory of a member or a region or locality in that territory, where a given quality, reputation, or other characteristic of the good is essentially attributable to its geographical origin. The second case is US Section 110 subsection 5 Copyright Act case. Now the case concerns Section 101(5) of the US Copyright Act, which allow the amplification of music broadcasts without an authorization and a payment of a fee by food service and drinking establishments and by retail establishments, provided that their size does not exceed a certain square footage limit. On being challenged by the European Union, the panel observed that the section does violate Article 13 of the TRIPS agreement. The reasoning of the report of the panel provides a very important guideline for interpretation of Article 13. The wording of Article 13 does not contain an express limitation in terms of the categories of rights under copyright to which it may apply. It states that limitations or exceptions to exclusive rights can only be made if three conditions are met. First condition: the limitations or exceptions are confined to certain special cases. This requires that a limitation or exception in national legislation should be clearly defined and should be narrow in its scope and reach. On the other hand, a limitation or exception may be compatible with the first condition even if it pursues a special purpose whose underlying legitimacy in a normative sense cannot be discerned. Second point, they do not conflict with a normal exploitation of the work. This requires that the measure does not have a substantial market presence. Which would otherwise be deemed to conflict with normal exploitation. For the purpose of such ascertainment, the both actual and potential effects on the commercial and technological conditions that prevail in the market currently or in the near future have to be analyzed. They do not unreasonably prejudice the legitimate interests of the right holder. Here, interests were held to include those interests that are justifiable in the light of the objectives that underlie the protection of exclusive rights, in addition to actual or potential economic advantage or detriment, prejudice to connote damage, harm, or injury, not unreasonable to connote a slightly stricter threshold than reasonable. It was also said by the panel that a limitation or an exception is consistent with Article 13 only if it fulfills each of the three conditions. The application of Article 13 of the TRIPS agreement to the rights provided under Article 11(1) and 11 bis 1 of the Berne Convention 1971 as incorporated into the TRIPS agreement need not lead to different standards from those applicable under the Berne Convention 1971, given that the possibility of providing minor exceptions forms part of the context of these articles. The next section deals with enforcement and dispute resolution mechanisms. Enforcement. Under Article 9(6) of the Paris Convention, a country was under no obligation to enact legislation permitting seizure or promoting importation of infringing goods. Part 3 of the TRIPS agreement makes it mandatory that members shall ensure that enforcement procedures permit effective action against any act of infringement covered by this agreement, including injunctive relief, Article 44, money damages, Article 45, and strong border control measures from Articles 51 to 60. Members are also obliged to frame legislations for criminal prosecution, including seizure, forfeiture and destruction of infringing goods in special cases. Dispute resolution. Article 64 of the TRIPS agreement provides for setting up of a dispute settlement forum almost on the lines of as dispute settlement under the WTO. Without a means of settling disputes, the laws are bare blank words. The WTO's procedure underscores the rule of law, and it makes the trading system more secure and predictable. The system is based on clear rules and regulations. Disputes are first referred to a panel, which submits its report. From that, appeals on points of law are allowed to the appellate body. Non-violation of TRIPS. Disputes generally arise when a member country shows or alleges the violation of any of the provisions of an agreement by another member country. However, in some situations, a government can go to the dispute settlement body even when no provision of any agreement has been violated. This is called a non-violation complaint. It is allowed if one government can show that it has been deprived of an expected benefit because of another government's action or because of any other situation that exists. Article 64.2 of TRIPS contains a temporary restraint on bringing non-violation complaints. This is called moratorium. It has been extended several times. In October, the TRIPS Council agreed to recommend extending the present period until 31st December 2015. Criticisms of TRIPS. First criticism. TRIPS essentially has nothing to do with trade directly and has ended up prejudicing and restricting trade, which is the mandate of World Trade Organization. Second, IP rights are domestic and territorial and governed by domestic laws and regulations. There is no world patent. Third, one size fits all approach is inappropriate for developing countries. Fourth, companies doing generics are not doing something innovative and have got unwarranted rights protection on it. Fifth, the rationale for TRIPS was trans-border and not domestic, but domestic rights and protection of IP has proliferated over the years. There is nothing trans-border in it. This entire module covers some aspects of the issue that the module concerns itself with. It does not really it hasn't really covered all the different facets and aspects of of the subject, but it is giving a comprehensive view, a rear side view of the subject at hand. Thank you.